Los Angeles, I'm and most Hollywood night. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, October 20th. The long national nightmare is over. No, not that one. Just the LA Galaxy season finally done after a 2-1 win over Minnesota United. I will tell you, there is relief across everybody. Fans, players, coaches, front office. Everybody's like, thank God this one is over. We're going to talk about the LA Galaxy's 2-1 win over Minnesota United. Maybe start hinting a little bit at the work that needs to be done in the offseason. And that stuff should be approaching rapidly. We'll give you some keys and insights as we do that as well. But welcome back to the show, a man who is frantically booking his ticket to Toronto as the Dodgers will now face off against the Toronto Blue Jays in the World Series. It is none other than our intrepid soccer reporter who sometimes masquerades as a baseball reporter, Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing, bud?
I'm on the United app right now.
Yep, you're there. You're getting a seat, a window. Are you a window or an aisle guy?
I'm a window guy.
Yeah, of course. Of course, that makes sense. You and I are the same. We both like to get there 7 hours early, and we like a window. Okay, good.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yep. So, hey, break up the Galaxy. Season-long 2-game winning streak.
Yeah, that's right. Tied their record for the year. 2 games in a row.
Over playoff teams.
Both playoff teams. I mean, it was sort of the theme. Listen, it was a good way to cap off a really crappy season, right? You get the LA Galaxy winning 2-1 over Minnesota United. They did so. By the way, it was my fault that they didn't get the shutout, Kevin, because I was looking up when the last time they had a shutout was whenever Minnesota scored their goal, because that was on me. I was like, I better look that up because it looks like it's gonna happen. Oh wait, no, never mind. Let me close that page.
That'll do it every time.
Every time. So, I was watching. I was paying attention. It was a nice sort of bookend to a really crappy year for the LA Galaxy. I mean, a 16-game winless streak to start. As you pointed out, their last 18 games, which starts with winning the 17th game, if you want to play the numbers there. They're a playoff team if they can keep that up without having a 16-game winless streak to sort of start on that. So. I think there's going to be a lot of reflection, Kevin. I think there's going to be a lot of, talking to Maya Yoshida, talking to Joseph Paintsel. They all we learned something from this year. And with Maya Yoshida, that's always interesting to hear from. And so sort of the message was we're ready to go for 2026. Like, this has gotten people apparently more excited for 2026. Which I can sort of understand.
What people?
The players. And quite honestly, I'll tell you, fans, I mean, you go and talk to people afterwards. Everybody acknowledges it's not good enough. And there's going to be a ton of pressure on the front office with Will Kuntz and Greg Vanney to try to get this right, Kev. But, they could have rolled over. Do you remember in 2017 when we saw teams quit? Right? We've seen teams quit before. I did not see this team quit this year. And I'm kind of surprised. If you start winless in 16, I would imagine there's give me the trash bag now. Let me clean out my locker. I want to get out of here. I don't want to play anymore. And the second half of the season showed that they wanted to play, and they played for stuff in Leagues Cup too. So,
well, yeah, I mean, they, as you mentioned, winless in their first 16, 0-12-4, but after that they went 7-6-5, which doesn't sound great. But if you break down the points per game for those 18 games, that would be a 49-point season. That's 1.4 points per game. That's a 49-point season if they had played all season the way they played the last half of the season.
Yeah.
I know that's a big if, but the point is, it wasn't like you said before we came on the air. This wasn't the 2017 team. This wasn't the 2008 team. This wasn't the 2020 COVID team. This was a pretty decent team. It just didn't play that well all season.
Yeah, it took them a real long time to get off the start. And injuries caused it. Listening to Greg Vanney talk about it afterwards, and it's stuff we've been talking about for most of the seasons. I can see it. I think Scott French asked a correct question, which was, you guys figured something out in the second half. Don't you think you should have figured it out a little bit sooner, right? And I think it's a fair question. And I think, on Greg's side of that, he's gonna point to the injuries, which he did. He's gonna point to just how some of the pieces didn't quite fit the way that they wanted to. He said, I think Greg also points to them starting to play better whenever they started to get healthier, and whenever they started to get healthier, then they started to play better. It was one of those self-fulfilling prophecies that you sort of put in there. But regardless of that, Vanney gets a contract extension in the middle of all that. That could have also been a death knell for Vanney, which is, hey, I guess I don't, I'm safe, so I don't have to really coach that hard. And we didn't see that. We saw the LA Galaxy come out and have a good second half. So, I think there's room for optimism. I think even across the league, there's some pundits. Certainly Matt Doyle had some thoughts on the LA Galaxy and what they would look like for next year. But there's some, if you can point to all the bad things, because Kevin, you and I are talking about the stats say this is the worst LA Galaxy team to ever play, right? And you can't just wipe that away. You can't say that doesn't exist.
No, you look through 7 wins, fewest ever in a full season, 18 losses, equals the record for a full season. The 66 goals allowed, that kind of snuck up on us, but that's second most ever, only one behind 2017. The goal differential, that's minus 22 in 2017. This year, I think it was minus 20.
Minus 20, correct.
Right? Yeah. And it was plus 20 last year, so a 40-goal swing in 1 year.
Yeah.
And their points per game, 0.88, was worst ever.
Yep.
It is 0.94 in 2017. Even the 2020 team, which I think a lot of people thought was the worst team, if you extrapolate out the numbers, that team, it was 1.0 for points per game. Yeah. So this team was worse than that.
I think if you let that 2020 team continue to play, that they fall below that mark. Let's be clear. And their goals, if you projected their goals in 2020, would have been a lot. Like they didn't score a lot, and they would have given up more than they have this year. Yeah, all those things are correct, and I think it's correct to point out that this is the worst LA Galaxy team in club history. I think that everybody has to own that. I think from Will Kuntz to Greg Vanney to all the players. Joseph Paintsel said something, and this is not a knock on him, but he goes, "I'm here to make history with this club." Right, that's what he told us again. Whenever we were in 2024 last year, he's like, winning championships. I'm here to make history. I'm here to leave my mark. In a sad way, this LA Galaxy team has absolutely left their mark on history this year as being the worst LA Galaxy team that ever played by points and everything else. And the good news is, Kevin, that there are people like you and me who, for the next 15 years, can talk about, but that team wasn't as bad as some of the other ones, and you could sort of point to it. But it's not going to matter whenever you go back and just look at the stats, because the stats are going to tell you a story. And as Sasha Kleshin famously said, the standings tell you where you're at, right? And the standings have been adjusted for the LA Galaxy. God forbid. Eric said something, I think, on Thursday's show that still rings completely true, which is last year the LA Galaxy were in first in that Western Conference all year, and then they fell to second the last game of the season, right? Here's the LA Galaxy this year, who are the worst team in the league 2 games before the season's over, and they somehow adjust themselves and end up finishing 26th in the league. They jumped 4 spots basically in the last 2 games and get themselves out of that wooden spoon and everything else that was sort of there. So, I forget.
And that does mean something, not a lot, but it means something.
It does. It means a little. I forget who it was, whether it was Greg or Maya Yoshida, and he was I think Scott French asked, do you take any satisfaction in not finishing last, right? And the answer was like, it's not something you celebrate, but I'm glad. Like, it was sort of like, I'm glad we weren't last. Like there is something there that means something. I think it was a point of focus for the Galaxy players down the stretch, Kevin, to not finish last, to find the way to win some games and do some stuff. And so I think that was at least somewhat successful in terms of, you're in a really crappy season. What can you possibly do? You cannot finish last. That's a good thing. Is it anywhere near the standards of what the LA Galaxy should be at? No, 100% not. Right. But
you know who I have a hard time, by the way, just while we're talking about the numbers, attendance lowest ever since the team moved to Carson, down 23% from last year. The average attendance was 20,067.
Yep.
Down more than 6,000 a game.
Yep.
Last year was the record. This year is the record for being the worst. But we were kind of talking. I mean, the one guy I have a hard time figuring it out is Greg Vanney. And the reason I say that is 2023 team won 8 games. I think that was another 18 loss season, right? And they're terrible. We asked him, both you and I asked him at the end of the season, are you still the guy, that should be in charge of this team? And he said yes, and talked about how the team had grown at the end of the season despite the record. And he comes back and wins an MLS Cup. And you say, well, yeah, he really did figure it out. Then he comes back this season, does even worse than 2023. He went 7 games, but as we said, closed really strong. So, I mean, it's you look at the Greg Vanney of the first half of the season, and it's like, my God, what happened? This guy just lost the team, and then the second half of the season, they play as good as a playoff team. And I don't know, I just have trouble figuring out where is Greg Vanney, and did he take a step forward? Did he take a step back this year? I don't know.
I think it's funny. Hey, Kevin, what I'm going to do, your audio is coming in a little broken. So why don't you hang up and call back in, and we'll it'll pop you right back in whenever you do it. But I want to see if resetting the connection will sound a little bit better. All right. So while he does that, I will give you the Greg Vanney stats that we can pull up. This is Greg Vanney's 5th year in charge of the LA Galaxy. And with the 5th year being in charge of the LA Galaxy, as you pointed out, in 2021, they won 13 games, lost 12, right? In 2022, they won 14 games, lost 12. In 2023, they won 8 games, lost 14. They also had 12 draws that season in 2023. 2024, which is the one that sort of helps him out the most here, 19 wins, 8 losses, 7 draws, for 64 points. In 2025, now you're at 7 wins, 18 losses, and 9 draws. If you look at what Greg Vanney has done in terms of points across 5 seasons, he's gotten 228 points out of there, and the average for his season so far is about 45.6 points. It works a lot better as an average, Kevin, than it does as let's say individual seasons, because I think he'd gladly take some of those years being 45 points instead of looking at points at in 2023 at 36 points and in 2025 of 30 points. And we can go through and look at some of the seasons just under Greg Vanney and look at it. I mean, the 30 points in 2025 is the lowest point total out of any LA Galaxy team, and it's certainly out of any LA Galaxy team that played 34 games, right? So 32 was in 2017. But even if you go back to 2023, the 36 points is a relative low for the LA Galaxy, and that's under Greg Vanney. So you can look at it, 48 points, 50 points, and then 36 points and 30 points. And the real outlier here is 64 points in 2024, which ends up winning him an MLS Cup where it all goes. So I don't know, Kevin. Here's the thing. Overall, if you look at his regular season for Greg Vanney, 61 wins, 64 losses, right? So under 500 in regular season. So that's a lot. 45 draws, 46 draws, something like that. In that, you go and add in his postseason, which, while it's not a lot, he has a lot of wins whenever you look at it. So he has 6 wins and 1 loss in the postseason, right, because of the MLS Cup run, and that gets you at 67 wins and 65 losses, right? If you go in and add Leagues Cup into that, his record actually probably gets a little bit better as well. But having said all this, if you're looking at regular season, postseason, right now, Greg Vanney's sort of hovering around the 500 mark. I agree with you that I don't know how to... or at least I don't know if we're 100% getting all this information from Greg Vanney correctly, if we're reading it correctly or doing any of the other stuff that we sort of see in this. But for me right now, looking at Greg Vanney and sort of where he's at, it's an interesting thing to sort of, and I think you correctly pointed out, it's an interesting thing to put in there and say, hey, is Greg Vanney getting better? Is Greg Vanney getting worse? And what does that mean for next year and possibly all of the I don't know exactly how to say this, but all of the pressure that's going to come to him. Let's see if we have you back. Go ahead and try to talk there. Okay, you are muted for some reason. We don't hear you. So try unmuting, and we'll see if you come back. Oh, there we go. Now I got you back. No, it didn't feel up to snuff at all whenever you look at that. And I know we're having some audio problems on the live now, apparently we can't hear you at all, Kevin. So even better. No, it's not you. I can hear you fine. So it has to be something coming through with Teams, because Teams and I have been arguing with each other now for a very long time. So anyway, we'll try to get that fixed, and if we can do any better on that, we certainly will try, and if not, then you'll certainly have to listen on the podcast stuff here. But no, Kev, I mean, the bottom line is that the Galaxy still have what I would consider a lot of work to do. And because there's a lot of work to do, because the LA Galaxy need to find something from some of that, it's going to be difficult for I think them to make major steps forward. Now, I sort of hinted at Matt Doyle earlier on this, and basically Matt Doyle went and did his final power rankings for the league after everything was said and done. He has the LA Galaxy at 20, which would be about 6 spots higher than they actually finished. And their record since June 1st across all competitions, 11 wins, 8 losses, 6 draws. And they're a playoff team again next year. Basically, that's what he's saying, and potentially more. That's if Ricky's 100%. So it certainly seems like there is a chance for the LA Galaxy to get something from next season. And when we look at next season and sort of what we're trying to do, I think that there's an argument there that the base has sort of been set, but there's also going to be, I think, a ton of positional arguments for different minutes and everything else that is going on. And whenever you look at that, that adds in more. The LA Galaxy are going to change things around. We know that they have, I think 9 players who are either free agents or in other places. But for whatever reason, they're going to have to make those decisions on those players. And then whenever they make those decisions on those players, they're going to have to find an LA Galaxy team that is trying to work on different things here. And to me, that's a difficult thing to sort of do. And I think that all of the arguments trying to find what the LA Galaxy are doing and how they're doing it and all those fun things is going to be, a sort of difficult thing to do. Kevin, what I want you to do is go ahead and kill your video and then call me on the phone, and we'll put you on the phone, because I know. Yeah, leave. There you go. There we go. Sometimes we have to direct. We're going to get it. Here it comes. But anyway, for the LA Galaxy now, some decisions to be made. And I think Kevin's sort of right in terms of what those decisions are and how those sort of, go about. And I think the hard thing that it's going to be for the LA Galaxy is to get this all done in the amount of time that they're supposed to have it done. Do I have you over there, Kevin? Let's see. Of course not. Why would that work? All right, try again. One more time. There we go.
Hi.
Okay,
Hello.
there we go. Okay, you're in, and now hopefully people can hear you.
or not, as the case may be.
Yes.
I mean, they may not want to hear me.
People were saying that I should just put up your creepy LinkedIn picture back up on the stadium, and that way we can hear you. So no, we got you back on there. So I mean, ultimately you look at all of the different things that are sort of coming for the LA Galaxy, and there's decisions to make. I even saw somebody in the chat room said, I'm uncomfortable with Elijah Winder getting 2,000 minutes next year. It's like, one, he shouldn't be. I think that you're going to find that you're going to get a mix of guys. But remember that when Ricky Puig comes back, Kevin, now you have another guy who's supposed to play all the minutes, who's going to play a good chunk of the minutes, assuming that he is healthy and good for guys like Elijah Winder, guys like Lucas Sanabria, all of a sudden you have to find minutes for these guys. And then you're trying to fit in the guys like Harbor Miller. And you're trying to fit in guys like Mauricio Cuevas with Miki Amane and John Nelson and Julian Aude. And yes, there are choices and decisions to be made in the offseason. So not all those names are going to come back. But, I don't think you should worry about, Elijah Winder or anybody in the midfield sort of sucking up minutes. I think you're going to get a lot of Edwin Cerrillo and Ricky Puig and a player to be named, whether it's Marco Royce, who's getting starting minutes, or, it's going to be Elijah Winder in there as well. But I don't know that you could gobble up 2,000 minutes for any of the guys who are sort of going to be off to the side, with Ricky starting for sure, and then possibly Edwin Cerrillo being that other thing.
Well, obviously we both took a long look at a lot of stats. One of the things I in talking to Will Kuntz earlier this year, and it was like, where did this team go wrong? What happened? And he talked about the midfield, losing Ricky and losing Marco Royce, and then some of the trades they made. And so I decided let's look at what did the midfield do last year. One of the things the midfield did, of course, is they were this sort of that's where a lot of the passing happened. Well, all the passing happened. That's where a lot of the balls were brought front for the guys who scored all those goals. So I took a look at and this, takes into account defenders as well. But the passing percentage for the Galaxy this year was 87.8%. They completed 88% of their passes. That's third best in MLS. It's a little bit off last year when they were number one, but not much. The number of passes they made was fourth in MLS. But last year when they, passed so well, they were second in shots on goal and second in shooting percentage. This year, that was way off. 47 goals. They were 19th. They had 4.6 shots on target per game. It's in the bottom half of the league. So I'm not sure that the problem was totally in the midfield. I think once they got the ball into the attacking third, I don't think the forwards did much with it. And I think if you look at the stats, you say the passing was there, the ball got into the attacking third, just nothing happened when it got there.
It absolutely did, and I agree. It was Damian Calhoun put up an article, or at least a poll on Twitter, that was like, which positional group needs the most work for next year, and it was like goalkeeping, defenders, midfield, and strikers. And for me, and I think I'm in a minority here, Kevin. I know that you at least know the stats, but I don't know if you're going to say that. Listen, I understand that defense is going to be a priority, and certainly finding another center back. I think a starting center back to sort of go back there and possibly be paired with Maya Yoshida and Chris Rindolph and Amiro Garces. And I'm sort of on the line of thinking that somehow Zonka doesn't come back for the LA Galaxy next year, right? And maybe it's a buyout situation. Maybe they can find and move them. But I understand the defense. But for me, it's striker, is that you got almost nothing out of the striker position all season. Nascimento scored a good goal against Minnesota United, and that's important, and that's something that you want to watch, and that's something that you want to see from him, but I'm not sure he's coming back yet. Like, I don't have that warm and fuzzy that the LA Galaxy are going to exercise that option and get him. So I don't think so. So for me, the biggest need, whenever you look, and you were 100% correct with, sort of looking at the goals scored and all the stuff. I mean, look at the goals scored. 46 goals this year, 69 goals last year. That's a 23 goal difference and then a 16 goal difference in terms of, the LA Galaxy giving up more goals. My whole thing is that the greater number there is striker 23. And I think the LA Galaxy were never in a position to win games a lot because they spent so much time playing from behind. And yes, that is a defensive issue, Kevin, but it's also an offensive issue. And because the offense didn't score goals, and Greg Vanney talked about it in the postgame, he said we didn't have a transition game for most of that first half. One, with injuries, and two, just sort of getting guys in right positions, trying to figure that stuff out. But we can look at this. 22 times this season, the LA Galaxy allowed the first goal, Kevin. And you and I both know the statistics on that. When you score the first goal, you have a better chance of winning. Only 12 times this entire season. 12 times out of 34 games did the LA Galaxy have a score first and really get to take a hold of the game. And in 4 of those games, they ended up losing, right? So 7-4-1 when they scored the first goal, 0-4-18 when they allowed the first goal. And this also goes to the whole not scoring on the road or not winning on the road, is that they weren't scoring on the road, that they were giving up the first goal on the road. And then you give a home team, an advantage like that, and you're gonna watch this. So I'm really interested to sort of see, and maybe you're interested as well, is yes, the importance of the defense. Yes, the importance of, sort of everything else that needs to happen on defense. And I think the midfield, I don't know what there's a whole bunch of things. Everybody on Damian's thing, Kevin, was saying that the midfield was where it needed the most work. And I just don't agree. It's going to be the defense or the strikers. And then after those, I'll go goalkeeper, and then I'll go midfield. For me, the midfield is the most sort of fleshed out. It's just that you were missing Ricky Puig this year.
Yeah, but yes, yeah, and Marco Royce didn't get to play as much as he had hoped, but I don't know. I mean, I would like to, we've talked about this before. I would like to see Ricky play before the end of the year. He's not going to play in the friendly. We're not going to know how healthy he is until they come back for training camp in February. Actually, January, right?
January.
It's going to be a little bit.
I was talking to some people, and I was like, so January, what, like 15th, 16th, like somewhere, maybe the 12th, like somewhere in that. And I haven't looked at the days of the week, but it'll be like a Monday on one of those. They're going to show up, and they're going to have to get going. So yeah, very early.
Because for all the downside to this season, the Galaxy did qualify for CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Yes.
I mean, that's a pretty big accomplishment.
It is huge, and the third place finish in Leagues Cup is important. Now, I had a long conversation with somebody who I won't name just because we were riffing back and forth, but we were talking about why one of the big things was the Coachella Valley Invitational and how that goes. There's two schedules, an A and a B schedule, and I think we talked about this, but the Galaxy are hoping that they get the B schedule, but it comes down to rankings and rankings for MLS and rankings for Liga MX in CONCACAF and sort of where that goes and how that finishes and whether or not the LA Galaxy will get maybe a more favorable draw into the B side of things, which would start later in the month than it would start earlier in the month, which is like that February 3rd to 5th window instead of like February 18th or something like that. So they're hoping that that whenever the draw comes out on December 9th, that the LA Galaxy will get, that B side schedule, which will push it later in and allow them to be at Coachella Valley Invitational. The other part that you said, though, Kevin, I want to highlight is that Ricky Puig, through his Instagram and through all a bunch of things, has thrown a lot of cold water on the whole idea of him playing in that friendly. I mean, he's basically said, no, it's not happening. And that's interesting too. And so Greg Vanney was talking to us before this last game, so we didn't ask him again, but before the last game, and he was saying, that Ricky had to go see the doctors to make sure everything was on track. You have periodic check-ins, and they check the status of everything, and then it goes on from there, right? And so for me, seeing Ricky Puig, sort of shoot some of those down. Now I wonder, was there a setback, or is it just still not moving as forward as you would expect? So that's an interesting wrinkle to everything as well.
Well, it seems like the Galaxy are not interested in having him on the field this season for whatever reason, and I'm sure they have their reasons. But that's where a lot of this, I think, has been coming from. Is the Galaxy just said, look, he's not going to play.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I also think that there's a real good chance that, it's not unusual for this particular injury to take a year, and we're not even at a year yet, right? So we won't be at a year here for another month or so because it happened later in November whenever he went down in that Western Conference Final. So I think it's slower than a lot of us anticipated, and I also think the fact that the Galaxy were absolutely crap sort of helped it be as slow as they want it to be. There was no rush whatsoever.
And like you said, you're talking about what's going to happen next year, and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, depending on Ricky Puig. I mean, again, kind of like to see what they've got with him.
I think everybody would like to see that, and it sort of depends on what you get back. I will say this: there's going to be an adjustment period again of learning how to play with Ricky Puig again. Greg said it, and I think we all expect it as well. Just that there is a real difficulty sometimes playing with Ricky Puig and just how he plays, because Greg said exactly this, that he tries to split defenses and sometimes it doesn't happen and that ball gets pushed right back into you, and how do you recover? We complained about and talked about that for all of 2024 as well. So it's something that is going to have to be adaptive to them, and in a time when they don't seem like they have a lot of adaptation. And we're going to get Will Kuntz on the show here probably in the next few weeks, that way we can sort of wrap everything up, but like to get his official sort of stance on this. But the idea right now, Kevin, is that you don't have enough time to get any of the international players in, so you really have to sort of stick with domestic. So as the Galaxy look to get better in the offseason, that there's going to be a lot of inter-MLS movement for them. And because of that, I think that the big names or the big splashes are going to be less. Plus, the LA Galaxy have 3 designated players. It's harder to do that with Marco Royce as one. One of the big question marks is going to be a Diego Fagundes. I think one of the big question marks is going to be John Nelson. I think one of the big question marks is, do you bring Mickey Imane back? Is he worth moving? Do you move somebody like Cuevas? Do you move somebody like Harbor Miller? You have a lot of guys for a small position. The big news now here, Kevin, is that we're seeing that the younger guys like Elijah Weiner, Ruben Ramos Jr., Harbor Miller, Mauricio Cuevas step forward, and they're on club-friendly contracts right now. So they're probably going to get held on to, and the guys who are not on club-friendly contracts are going to be the ones who might move. So it's going to be interesting.
Well, and again, as you kind of alluded to, the CONCACAF Champions Cup dates make it imperative that whatever additions are made, they get here early. We can't, the Galaxy can't wait until February or March. They'll be out of the CCC by then, and the league season will be, 10 games old. Yeah,
it will be, and it'll be it'll be over quick if that's the case. Much like we saw this year. I am working on a end of year survey with one of the Nashville producers of content, they basically are doing a league-wide survey, and each section, if you say you're a fan of the LA Galaxy, will take you to like an LA Galaxy section, or if you say you're a fan of Nashville, it'll take you to a Nashville section. So I spent about 2 hours this morning writing survey questions along that, and so I'm interested to see. I mean, there's some that are just like what would you make of the LA Galaxy season this year? I can only imagine what the survey response is going to be. A 1 out of 5. What would you rate it? 1. Okay, so those aren't hard, but there's others in there. Is like, what do you think's going to happen for next year? And I think that there is positive momentum. I think there's positive momentum, but for me, I also think that there's a lot of question marks, and as those question marks come in, we're going to have to try to figure some of that stuff out as it goes. Let me get to some super chats here. $5 super chat from Adam. Guys, it felt emotional hearing Joe Tutino sign off one last time after the final whistle. Were you guys able to hear Joe at the ending of the game? Unfortunately, we do not get any audio piped into the press box, so I usually am just listening to the crowd there. But Joe always does an amazing job, and it's going to be a real cold day. But whenever Joe Tutino doesn't do those anymore, so I would imagine that he'll be back. And in fact, I'm counting on him being back, because there's no better soundtrack to games than Mr. Joe Tutino, as far as I'm concerned. So,
with Vince Scully being gone and Bob Miller, I mean, he's the dean. He's the longest serving play-by-play guy in LA in any sport. He's been around the club since its inception. He was there at the first season, although he wasn't on radio. I don't think a lot of clubs understand the value of having that history, still in the building. And so they lose. If Joe were to move on, and we don't know that that's the case.
No.
But I'm saying that you lose a lot more than just the radio voice. You lose all kinds of stuff with Joe.
I will go on record now saying there should never be a separation between Joe Tutino and the LA Galaxy. All right, that should always be gets kept in the family, Kevin. Right, that's one that's kept in the family. There's nothing there. And by the way, I don't think there's going to be. I'm just firmly on the side that Joe Tutino belongs on the airwaves. Quite honestly, where Joe Tutino really belongs is doing radio for the LA Galaxy and that type of thing. And I think that that's still one of the biggest things that's missing from the LA market for the LA Galaxy is the radio side of things. Whether that's making sure games are on Sirius XM or whether that's over local radio, certainly the YouTube stuff helps, and I'm sure that there are a certain number of people who turn into those going, but it's not a seamless integration whenever you're trying to watch a game and trying to have Joe Tutino be on there. And quite honestly, we need a way to be able to listen to Joe Tutino when the Galaxy are on the road. Nobody's more prepared. Nobody knows the history of this club. Nobody feels it more when they're announcing the Joe Tutino. Not saying that there aren't some really good MLS announcing groups, because I know a bunch of them and I know how hard they all work at it. But Joe Tutino is simply a cut above the rest. Not that I planned on going on a Joe Tutino's press box, but I cannot express to you, Kevin, or to our listeners what Joe has meant to me during my time covering the LA Galaxy. He gives me. There's some guys, Kevin, if they come up and say, and I don't know, maybe you have somebody in writing that would do this, but if somebody who you looked up to said, hey, you need to do this, right? And it doesn't come across as a criticism, you feel honored to receive the feedback. That is Joe, and he's always been kind and gracious with his feedback, and I get to talk to him before almost every single game. Damian and I are usually standing there, and Joe comes up and talks to us. That there is nobody better to talk about the LA Galaxy than Joe Tutino, 100%.
Nobody nicer.
He's amazing. He is one of the nicest people in the world. He says hello to everybody in the entire stadium as he walks by, workers and everything else that goes on there, everything that goes on. Every person in service, whether that is, the police or anybody who's in their military uniform, he stops and says, thank you for your service, the whole deal. He is just the top professional, and I am so lucky, Kevin, that I know him. I feel like it's like with Michael Araujo, the same sort of thing, just in terms of the upper echelon of people who do this. But Joe Tutino is like up there on my LA Galaxy Mount Rushmore. In fact, he may be one of the tops in terms of my LA Galaxy Rushmore. Just an amazing man. So he better be back. Let's just put it that way. I'm going to leave it at that and say he better be back. Let's see. Adam also asked $5 super chat. He says, what's the reason the Galaxy is playing in friendly versus Club America? So, Kevin, The short answer, at least from the LA Galaxy side, is they're trying to make the off season shorter for the players, right? And the whole idea is that they're going to have too much time off, and they want to give them a competitive game to play, and so this helps shorten that off season a little bit. The LA Galaxy are off this week, and then I think they come back for about 3 weeks of training, and then they'll basically be ready to play that game, right? So that'll sort of be it, and then that will end their season. There's another side of that as well, which is there's money. There's money in that, and I don't think that should surprise anybody. I don't think Club America is going to bring "quote unquote" a competitive team. I think there's going to be a lot of like subs and stuff like that, and I think for the LA Galaxy that they're going to be careful and patient, sort of with some of the minutes they're going to dole out as well. So again, no Ricky Puig. Certainly doesn't look like that's the case. And then everybody else, you're not going to have Marco Royce suit back up for this game. You're going to give him time off. So like it's, there's a whole bunch of guys there that probably aren't going to play in that game. It's more of just a training exercise that will net the LA Galaxy some money and get the guys some minutes. Is that fair?
Excuse me. Yeah, it's fair, but the teams have these players under contract. All the players under, they have contract. They belong to the Galaxy until December 31st. The Galaxy can basically do whatever they want with them. Back in the day when Beckham was here, if you remember, they used to go on sort of barnstorming trips to Asia at the end of the season. They play in the Philippines or maybe play in Hong Kong or somewhere. I think one year they went to Australia. That always followed the season, and that seemed to me, from talking to players, it was kind of a fun thing. The players enjoyed that. It was laid back. It was fun, and the Galaxy picked up a lot of coin because they had David Beckham with them. This one strikes me a little bit different, and I'd love to talk to some players. I mean, you got guys like Nascimento and Peck and Paintsil. They want to go home and see their families. They sort of want to get out of Dodge. The season's over. There's nothing to play for. And the Galaxy are asking them to stay for an extra month, which, again, contractually they can do that, and there may be reasons for that. But I can't imagine it's playing really well with the players. I would imagine the players would want to go home and start their offseason and start thinking about next year, not hang around and train for a month to play friendly.
Yeah, I know. It's not fun. I think Greg said there would also be some inter-team scrimmages and stuff like that as well that would sort of get those guys going. But I mean, the other flip side of that is if you don't want... I think there's also players who are like, the offseason can't be this long, because if the offseason is this long, they all have sort of routines and things that they have to do in order to stay in shape. Joseph Paintsil said he would go home, spend some time with his family, and then he would get right back at it. And of course, the big question for Joseph Paintsil coming into next season, Kevin, is how is he going to prep himself to be ready for the World Cup? Because Ghana has qualified. Joseph Paintsil is not a lock to be on that team, but he is somebody who definitely could play some minutes coming off the bench on that team. So how does he make sure and ensure that he's ready? Now, Joseph Paintsil had 10 goals, 5 assists in regular season for the LA Galaxy this year. Those are tremendous numbers. And if, by the way, 7 of those goals came since July 4th. So it really has been a second half for him that has sort of snapped into place. And that has allowed him to sort of rise once again to national team status. The flip side of that is, with a long off season, with not a lot of training opportunities, and the fact is he'll have to come in the winter. They'll be ready for CONCACAF Champions Cup, all those things that sort of go into it, and he's going to have to remain healthy during all that time because he was not healthy to start the season. We remember back at Coachella, Kevin, whenever we saw him walking from the van with a couple of the other guys who were hurt and not with the rest of the team. You were going to say?
I said I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that distinctly.
Yeah, he walked by us and the whole deal, but that means he has to come in ready to play, and that means he has to start the season with high intensity. We were talking about player of the year for the LA Galaxy, and Damian and I both put, Diego Fagundez as our player of the year. One of the guys who popped up on the radar is certainly Joseph Paintsil with what he's done. But again, scoring all your goals since July 4th, he's only been healthy the second half of the season. And really, it's only been the last 5-6 games where you've really seen him hit stride, where you're like, that's the Joseph Paintsil I remember from last year. So there's going to be a lot of motivation for him to be ready, and I think that's a good thing. For the LA Galaxy and for Joseph Paintsil, that he's going to have to hit the ground running in the wintertime whenever he comes back and is ready to rock and roll to be ready for this World Cup. Because if he comes out, if he's injured, if he doesn't play, he will not make that World Cup team for Ghana. He's not on the bubble. He should be on that team. But at the same time, he's not a starter. And if you're not a starter and you're a guy who's coming off the bench, Kevin, then you better be in form for the coach to pick you so that way you can get some minutes in the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, and he's got a lot to play for. And, who wouldn't want to come back? He'll be coming back to play the World Cup in his home country, maybe his home city from his Galaxy days.
It's kind of a cool thing. Again, I really think that there's going to be something awesome about possibly watching Ghana in the World Cup and Joseph Paintsil being out there. It'll be a lot of fun. So if only the LA Galaxy had some U.S. men's national team players on it. Remember that used to be a thing all the time, and it hasn't been a thing since Giassi Zardes left.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I was looking at that. Obviously, the U.S. did not make the World Cup in 2018. I don't think there were any Galaxy players that were on the national team that lost. Maybe Sebastian Lletget might have been in and out of that team. But in 2022 was the first time since the Galaxy were founded in 1996, the first time the U.S. played in a World Cup without a Galaxy player on the roster.
It's always interesting. I remember following all that and actually going to cover U.S. men's national teams games because of the LA Galaxy connections there. But there's some Galaxy players on some different international teams, and certainly at the academy level, that's starting to pick up as well. So maybe a return there is not too far in the distant future. $25 super chat from Herb. Executive producer Herb. Herb says, "Hey Josh, hey Kevin. Not knowing what the Galaxy roster will look like, I would like to ask your predictions. Guaranteed to be wrong. Did the Galaxy make the playoffs? And is Vanney still at the helm when the season ends?" That's a good one, Kevin. I'll let you go first because I feel like it'll be more fun that way. Do the Galaxy make the playoffs? Two questions: will the Galaxy make the playoffs next year? And will Greg Vanney still be at the helm when if they do or do not?
Yes and yes. I think they make the playoffs, and I think Greg Vanney survives the season.
Here's the thing, and it's kind of crazy. Like, I could see a poor start to the LA Galaxy season. There's two thoughts that I have, and I think I've given these on the show. There's two thoughts that I have that because things are going to be so condensed at the beginning of the season that there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure for the Galaxy to start well. And if they don't, then I think the hot seat pressure really increases for Greg Vanney. The other side of that is that if they're not going to go out and make any, big international moves, perhaps that they give Greg Vanney more leeway and get him through to that summer transfer window with the 6 to 8 weeks that's going to be the World Cup break and all the sort of fun stuff that's going to happen with that. So I'm sort of two minds, but I am with you. I will agree. I think the Galaxy make the playoffs, and I think that Greg Vanney is still at the helm whenever they do. I don't know. Yeah. By the way, that's like only the top 9 teams in the Western Conference. It's not. It's not that hard to make the playoffs. The Galaxy just seem to make it hard on themselves sometimes.
But you bring up a good point. He needs to get off to a fast start. I mean, if they lose more than half their first 10 games, I think the pressure is really going to build on him.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And it was the other thing, there was the rumor that Will Kuntz was interviewing with St. Louis, which we debunked on the show and said, no, that's not happening. There's this, I don't know, the central line of thinking that Will Kuntz could also be on the hot seat. And I'll tell you that you and I both know how this usually works. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work that way, but usually how this works is a GM will get a coach. Greg Vanney isn't even, Will Kuntz's coach, unless you consider the fact that he gave him a contract extension after the MLS Cup win. The fact that Greg Vanney now Will Kuntz now inherits Greg Vanney from that.
Yeah, and I think the two are sort of, the two are sort of joined at the hip. As one succeeds, the other succeeds, and as one goes down, the other goes down. I think I do think the pressure's kind of on both. I mean, Will Kuntz was playing with house money this year because of what he did in his first year as GM. Now he's had a great season and he's had a bad season, and I think it's now kind of the books are balanced, and he goes into this season needing to produce again. He doesn't have to win an MLS Cup, but he can't do this again. He can't have a season like this one again. It's
interesting, too, though. One of the questions in the survey is going to be how did the technical staff do, including like GM and scouting and all that sort of stuff. And I think there's some misses, certainly, in this year. But I think at the midway point, we thought that everything was a miss, right? Like, we were like, man, didn't hit on a single player. Sanabria is not good. Winder's not good. Christian Ramirez isn't good, the whole deal. And somehow they seem to have come around a little bit. Nascimento ended up turning into an okay striker, and maybe there's room to sort of. I mean, the goal he scored against Minnesota United is exactly like you're like there strikers. That's how strikers score goals. That's what you want to see. So I think that he came around. I think that Winder came around. When you look at the advances that they got out of the guys that they brought up from the academy in the Cuevas side of things, that worked. The Harbor Miller side of things, that worked. And maybe Kuntz gets credit for that. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe that's a Greg Vanney development thing. And that's sort of the other thing I've been harping at is that it seems like the academy players, the academy system is ready to sort of produce its first like multiple player crop that could be coming towards the LA Galaxy senior team. And if that's the case, you could be setting yourself up with the style of play that's being played from top to bottom, which matches the LA Galaxy style of play all the way. And you can hear from Harbor Miller. He'll tell you that whenever you go. Even Elijah Winder went down to play with Ventura County because they play the same way that they do up here. And look at the strides that he made towards the end of the season. So I think there's a possibility that the Galaxy could be on that plane to sustainability. But if the Galaxy, again, Kevin, I think you're right. If the Galaxy have a slow start, if something happens there, that could all go out the window pretty fast. The Galaxy don't win the first 5-6 games of the season, and I think there's going to be a hot seat. So yeah.
If that thing with the youth development team, comes together the way you're talking about, and bringing Ventura along and the players down there playing the same system, all that kind of stuff. That's something that Greg's been working on for a while.
Yes.
This is not a new thing. And this is actually something that he wanted to do. When he went to Toronto before he became manager, he was in charge of the development academy. That's sort of his baby. That's what he likes to do. He fell into coaching and has done a very good job with it. But I think at heart, he's kind of a player development guy in a lot of ways. If he can get this Galaxy academy system to start producing players like it did back in the day. I remember we had guys coming through the academy like Romney, like Steris, Zardes came through the academy. If he can just start getting guys developed through the academy, that will be worth, I don't want to say worth what he does with the first team, but it will certainly be a real sort of feather in his cap and a real push to move the team forward and not have to worry about, hey, we lost our striker, we had to trade him, we're going to have to go get one in Brazil, or we're going to have to go get one in Argentina or somewhere else.
Yep.
If they build from within, it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, it very well could. Let me get to some other news here before we sort of wrap some things up. Maya Yoshida posted on X and said, a frustrating season comes to an end, but I've learned a lot through it. It's not failure until you give up. Refine myself and fight again. Kaizen, always. Thank you for your unwavering support. Jeez, there you go, Mr. Maya Yoshida. He's a treasure. Still has one more year left on his contract, by the way. So he will be back. It's funny because Zonka has a year left on his contract as well, and I see almost no way that Zonka is able to come back again, right? But Maya Yoshida is going to be back next year. I think you can say that. The other bit of news was the LA Riot Squad crowned their player of the year, Mauricio Cuevas, named the 2025 LA Riot Squad player of the year. The really awesome... What was that?
That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they if you get adopted by the LA Riot Squad, you're in good hands there. So I say Mauricio Cuevas had an excellent finish to the season. Really great. He is the best crosser of the ball on the LA Galaxy. It's not even close. His right foot is absolutely magical. So how do you get him on the field more? Knowing that you have guys like Miki Imane over there, that Harbor Miller can play that spot, and that's probably going to be the spot that he plays. Cuevas plays wing back probably better than he does straight up as a right back, because I will still question his defensive abilities, which is why he wasn't named on my Defender of the Year list. So I think for me, Cuevas has a ton of upside, but he sort of plays an in-between position. Harbor Miller has a ton of upside, and you need to get him minutes, and you need to find both of these guys minutes, but he plays an in-between position. We saw Harbor Miller playing a 9 on this level. We saw Elijah Winder pressing up and drawing on the front line in this last game against Minnesota as well. That's a new dimension that we haven't seen as well. So, but you have to find these guys playing time. You have to find them slots. And when Ricky comes back, that gets more difficult, not easier. And if you're keeping Miki Imane, if you're keeping Julian Aude, if you're keeping John Nelson, then you have a bunch of guys for a couple spots. Greg Vanney wants a deep team, Kevin. He has preached it now multiple times in the last probably month, where he's like, next year we need a deep team. Next year we need a deep team. And I think that these younger players on team-friendly contracts help create that depth. But that being said, there's going to have to be some decisions in here. I don't think you can keep everybody. And if that's the case, then who are you going to move? How much is it going to net you? What are you trying to open up, and what are you trying to accomplish? And I think that's something that Will Kuntz and the entire front office staff has to figure out how they're going to approach that. And Greg Vanney has to understand the pieces that he's getting and how they fit, because I think there's some guys who fit in between pieces, and I don't think that's always clear where you want to put them or how you want to play them.
What do you think the emphasis on the deep team? Do you think he's looking at the fact that they've got Champions Cup. They've got the MLS season. They've got probably U.S. Open Cup or Leagues Cup in the middle of the season.
U.S. Open Cup is going to be the one, if it even gets played. This is what he's told us, and I think he's right. There's a 6 to 8 week break that's coming for the World Cup, right? So we have basically 2 months, a month and a half, 2 months. There's going to be no games played. That means that you have to cram them all in on one side or the other of the World Cup, right? So he knows that they're going to be playing every 3-4 days. And so when you're playing every 3-4 days, you need a deeper team. And I think that's sort of where we're at, which is that the LA Galaxy need a deeper team, and that they want to try to create that depth. And I think the only way you can create that depth in Major League Soccer is by using some of the younger players to give you depth. And I think the LA Galaxy maybe have a little bit of a head start on that for this next season. Maybe this season is a goofy one, Kevin, and because it's goofy, maybe you're going to get a goofy winner, or a goofy team is sort of going to show up, and maybe that could be the LA Galaxy if they time that right. I don't know. It certainly seems to me like the start is going to determine a lot for next year. And I think there's a lot of pressure on that. And I think that the offseason may be long, but it's also going to be really short in terms of trying to get people in because of the CONCACAF Champions Cup start. And so, again, I just think the pressure ratchets as we go through. This is not going to be a calm offseason. This is going to have to be hectic, get people in, move people out. I think I said it, but before the November 15th game, we're expecting that the LA Galaxy players know their contract status with the team. That could even be announced. I think Montreal already announced some of their decisions. So they're already making the news known that, like, yes, your contract is good, no, your contract isn't. They've already made those decisions. They've let the team and the players know, and now all of MLS knows. So we'll see if that's one of those things that happens. So anything else, Kevin, that you sort of want to close out on?
No,
okay.
I don't think so.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I know you're like, now I have to go to Toronto, so you're figuring that part out. Have you been to Toronto?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think of the soccer connection there. I mean, Toronto's not playing anymore. There won't be any MLS Cup games there, right?
Correct.
You know what? I could go to Greg Vanney's old house.
What are you gonna do? Text him and say, hey, where'd you used to live? Let me go stop by there. Don't be creepy. Don't be creepy. You can't do that. No, I just it's interesting. The Toronto stuff that sort of pops up. And by the way, Toronto playing a little bit better towards the end of the year as well. If you were watching some of the Toronto FC games, doing that. But the big Toronto thing that I always think of is whenever they said we're going to hold MLS Cup in Toronto, and the year before, I think it was the 2010 World Cup was held in Toronto, because I remember Don Garber saying he was in Seattle at the time, and I was up at that Seattle MLS Cup game for the LA Galaxy in 2009, and he goes, "Don't worry," he goes, "it's warmer in Toronto right now than it is in Seattle," right? And then the next year, of course, it was like 30 degrees whenever they went to go play the MLS Cup between Dallas and Colorado, which ended on an own goal in extra time. Thank you very much. So much fun. Anyway, that's all I have for that. Big shot. Yeah, go ahead.
You were there in 2009 in Seattle?
I was at the stadium in 2009 when the LA Galaxy lost on penalty kicks to Real Salt Lake. Yep, I was at MLS Cup. I've been to MLS Cup 2009. I've been to, and then all the ones at the LA Galaxy since. So actually, excuse me, I forgot to count one. I was at MLS Cup in 2008 because it was New York Red Bulls and Columbus Crew.
And who was the Columbus coach?
Columbus coach was Guillermo Barros-Schelotto. No, it wasn't. He was on the team. It was Siggy Schmidt.
Oh, Siggy Schmidt. Yes.
Yep. And then he went to Seattle the next year.
Yep.
So yes. Yeah, I was at that game in 2008. So I've been 2008, 2009, 11, 12, 14, and 24 are my MLS Cups.
About that 2008 game, I mean, all the future Galaxy things that were involved in that game. Future coach, two future coaches, future two fired coaches.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff going on in that one for sure. So an interesting one. One of the things is it is the anniversary of the October 20th. The LA Galaxy beat the New England Revolution in the MLS Cup and it was quite a game that ended in extra time. There were some big stars on the field. Kobe Jones, of course, that we talk about. El Tanque. Let's see who else was on there. CN, Carlos Ruiz. I think Alexi Laws was there. Kevin Hartman. I'm sure there's some other guys I'm missing, but 2002 was a special year. The first time the LA Galaxy won an MLS Cup. Kobe Jones tweeted it out today and said, "You always remember your first." So that was it. So a good long time for the LA Galaxy since that, but a lot of fun.
Speaking of MLS Cups, and maybe this is something that I shouldn't throw out now, but have some of the listeners think about for the next pod. Maybe they can send in super chats. Was last year worth it? If you had known that this season was going to be this bad, would you still have taken the MLS Cup last year? I mean, if that was part of the deal, like you win MLS Cup, you have that year, the 19 wins, undefeated at home, all the things that happened, that 4 guys scoring 10 or more goals. Would you take that, knowing that the penalty was then you have to suffer through this season, the worst season in franchise history?
I mean, you should have your fan card removed if you don't trade for a championship, right? I mean, I try to put this into perspective. I don't think people understand, especially longtime fans of the LA Galaxy, is that how hard this league now has become. It's almost this is getting to a certain level where, in order to be the top 4 in either league, and we can certainly say that there's too many teams in the playoffs, I'm for that, but in order to be a top 4 team in either conference, there's almost no mistakes you're allowed to make. Really, like not anything big. It's not like you can't lose a game. You can lose a game or two here, that type of thing. But in order to be in those top 4 positions, because there are 15 teams, or 14 teams, 16 teams in each conference, the margin for error has shrunk so much than what it was whenever you even go back to just a 2011 or 2012. The amount of teams has made it virtually impossible to win an MLS Cup now. There will be a team. There will be good teams that rise. There'll be teams that compete for it. But to think that anybody's going to simply repeat or run anything close to having like 3 MLS Cups in 4 years with the amount of teams and everything that's going on now, it has become such a parity-driven but difficult league because of the fact that there are so many teams in it now. So it's difficult. This is a difficult one to sort of watch.
Well, and that's why this year has been so hard for so many fans. Is last year just felt magical. I mean, it just felt like everything went right. And the great thing about it was nobody really paid attention to what was happening until the last third of the season. Right. Everyone was kind of waiting for the bubble to burst. It's like, these guys aren't that good. They aren't that good. And then all of a sudden we realized that, they are this good, and they are going to the MLS Cup, and they are competing for a Supporters Shield. In fact, I said all along last season, if you remember, up until September, that they weren't a Supporters Shield team, and they almost won it. It wasn't that they necessarily snuck up on people. It's just that they sort of came together over time and became a world beater over time. I think they always knew that they were that good. But and maybe that's what makes this season a little bit more difficult. Is last season was so magical, and just to have it end like this just seems kind of unfair. But I think you're right. I mean, if you had a chance to win a title last year and you had to suffer through a season after that, it's probably worth it.
The LA Galaxy will remain defending MLS Cup champions until they crown a new winner. Whatever December that happens. 5th. Yeah, December 5th, right? Yep. So that's bottom line. End of story. That's how it goes. That's how it works. The other part of that is that this season didn't allow LA Galaxy fans to sort of relish in the whole championship. I think there are better ways to win and then not win a championship the next year. This is probably the worst way you could do it, right? If the Galaxy finished absolutely dead last, which they were close to doing, it would be even worse. But the fact is that this season didn't allow anybody to sort of revel in the championship, right? You usually want to have some swagger the next season. The Galaxy started, with no wins in 16. There's zero swagger left after that. There was zero swagger left after going winless in 10. They almost went winless in 20. So it did hurt, and I think that if you want to do it again, Kevin, you want to try not to repeat that. That's my only thing. So.
Well, yeah. At the beginning of the season, everyone was saying, we got a target on our back. Everybody wants to beat us. We're the defending champions. If they knock us off, that's a big deal for them. And by about 8 games into the season, that was done. We were past that. The Galaxy were definitely not a team that had a target on their back. was almost like opponents were feeling sorry for him after a while.
It is. I think certainly in the second half there were people who underestimated them, and they got better in the second half as well, and learned how to do it. So, all right, podcast schedule coming up. No show on Thursdays. Time for some time off. I know, crazy. I'll say right now we'll probably be back next Monday. I don't know what your schedule is. You got World Series, so I imagine that you may be in or out. But we'll
actually, this is good. Scheduling note, I am going to Toronto and we'll do the first 2 games there. Then I go to New York for the U.S. Olympic Committee's Winter Olympics Summit.
Ooh.
So I'm in New York next Monday, and I will be in my hotel ready to go at 11 o'clock New York time.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, then we will...
the microphone. You take the microphone through security.
Yeah, you don't like doing that. You get frisked too much when you do that, so we'll make that work. So, but that will also give me some chance, hopefully, to get rid of Teams and get onto Zoom, because I'm high on that. I've been working on it for a couple nights, for like 3 or 4 nights or whatever since Thursday. I've been trying to make it happen. Still hasn't worked yet, but we'll get there. All right. Anything else, Kevin? We good?
We're good.
All right. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter, why would you? On any of those social medias, is at KBaxter11, and then head over to the LATimes.com for all of his wonderful writing. Please check out at KBaxter11 and LATimes.com for all of Kevin's stuff. As for me on social, at Galaxy Podcast on any of these social media, cornerofthegalaxy.com, and then on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, any of the places you can get podcasts, you can find us. All right. All right, that about does it for all of that fun. For Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman, signing off for a little bit of 2025 here as we get ready to head into that off-season work. All right, everyone, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the rest of your week. Adios. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.